So welcome back to 300 Seconds on Agency Growth. I'm Patrick, and today I'm joined by the brilliant Sally Weavers, who is the co-founder of Craft Media London. So welcome, Sally.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Craft was founded 7 years ago in a counter to the advertising industry trends of downgrading strategic rigour, a lack of creative integration, and the sheer sea of sameness of media plans. Tell me about how Craft Media London started. Where did the thought come from?
So when I left Initiative, I went on a brilliant holiday.
Excellent.
As you do. And when I came back, I spent about 6 months talking to a range of clients, strategists and creative agencies, really to try and better understand what they all believed would make their work better. What was missing in the market? What was the state of the planning output currently? And they all pretty much said the same thing. So from a client point of view, they were telling me that, you know what, we no longer know whether the plan we're being presented is the right plan. It doesn't feel like our plan. There's nothing distinctive about it.
Right.
We're using the same channels in the same way as most of our competitors. Creative agencies said, we get the same plan out of media agencies all the time. And actually what they're trying to do is make the idea smaller rather than bigger. Okay. And we would love to have a brilliant comm strategist in the room with us when we're developing work, because they can, if they do their job properly, make work more famous. And then from a strategist point of view, and you know from when we work together, strategists are as rare as hen's teeth. And
good ones are, yes.
They spend most of their time pitching.
Yeah.
And so there's a frustration amongst the strategy community that they never actually see most of the work in the real world. They pitch, you have a 25% chance of winning a pitch, and most of your thinking will be on the losing side. So they'll put their heart and soul into developing a strategy, and it goes nowhere. So there was a real frustration that they weren't being utilised in the right way. And so I had a thought that, maybe I could create a squad. And at the time, I thought it would just be a small number of squad members that would sit in the middle between creative and media and really do that bit of planning that it felt like the market really needed.
The name Craft, the logo where you have the needle and it's being threaded, makes it feel almost artisanal. It's the fact that you kind of carefully craft every single element of the work that you do. How do you bring that brand philosophy, which is obviously being created by yourself and your co-founder, how do you bring that to the people that work with you and work in your teams?
Yeah, so intensive training, but also living by our values. So we talk about craft being the craftiest and the nicest. So craftiest being always looking for a new way, looking to try and develop new ideas, new thinking. And the nicest being the people that you want in the room, regardless of which agency team you're on. If craft's in the room, we should be there to make it better. And that logo was very, very specific. I mean, we designed that with a brilliant designer, a guy called Luke Wakeman. And I really wanted that to be a kick against the progression towards automation. That sort of, that sense that everything was looking and feeling the same.
I remember when we first talked, you said as you created the agency, you comms planned the hell out of it.
Yeah, we did.
What did you mean by that?
Again, we spent a long time thinking about what does the perfect comm-strat agency look like? What would we do to make sure that we are celebrating good strategy, that we're teaching good strategy? And we put our own comms plan together. How do we talk about ourselves? So we have a consistent way of talking about ourselves. By the way, that was honed over months and months of talking to people about the proposition. And each time afterwards, we'd go, did that work? How can we make that better and stronger? We train people from the ground up. So rather than hiring in from outside with a lot of bad habits that we then need to break, we like to bring in people who will think about all comms rather than just paid comms. And we talk about all comms, not paid comms, consistently. Is that if there's one question that Craft asks relentlessly is, what does this look like from a PR point of view? What's the role of CRM? So making sure that we're always thinking about the broadest channels.
You call your people crafties. I can almost picture what a crafty is, sort of thing. But how important is it for an agency to have a very sure-minded proposition on who you are and what you give to clients?
It's so important because all agencies are broadly the same. I had an experience the other week where I sat with my client watching media agencies pitch. So pitching.
I'd love to see that.
Oh
I've
my
only ever
God.
been on the other end.
Oh my God. They all say the same thing. And they use a lot of shuns and, distribution, optimization, personalization. They all use the same words.
Yeah.
And it's actually, from a client point of view, it all merged into one by the end of the day. They were pretty unsure who was who.
I think one of agencies' worst traits reminds me of Catherine Tate, when someone gives her an impossible task and she just goes, I can do that. Yeah. You get that with agencies. They just say they can do everything rather than, like you guys are, focusing on one thing and doing it absolutely brilliantly.
Yeah, and you know what? That's been hard over the years. We've had a lot of finger wagging and a lot of people telling us that, the only way to grow and the only way to make money is if you move into buying.
Yeah.
And honestly, nobody wants Jen and I being in charge of their budget.
An
utter disaster. Yeah. It's really difficult to just kind of make sure that you keep on track, right? We've got a vision. We know that we're doing great work. We know that great comms planning can be transformational for businesses. We've seen that in every client that we work with. And so why would we water that down by then being compromised in a way by what we recommend strategically because we have a bunch of media that we need to sell off the back of it?
Yeah. You have an interesting phrase that I've seen in some of your comms. It's the greyification of media. You touched on it to begin with, and we used to say the phrase, am I buying the plan or am I planning the buy?
Yeah.
And I think the second often happens far too much. I've got some inventory and I need to get rid of it because I have commitments to media owners, and I end up just planning my buy rather than buying my plan. How do you make sure your work is stand out? How do you make sure it's different? Do you have checks and balances, or do you just feel it, or how does it work?
We're an absolute pain in the neck for most of the buying agencies that we work with.
I can imagine.
And because we will never buy a standard package of stuff. We never want 300 ratings.
No.
We always want these 10 programs. We never want a package of 6 sheets across the nation. When our very first client was a clothing launch called Collusion by ASOS. We wanted to create almost like a corridor of influence or a catwalk from where students lived to where they studied to where they parted. So she sent me up to Manchester and I sat on this bus that went from where the students all lived right the way past the unis into Piccadilly Gardens, and I took photos of every single poster site that I could see along the way, including some really great sort of fly posters, some 6 sheets, some 48 sheets, a banner, and I gave that to the buying agency and they were just like, oh God, are you kidding? No, I want all of those. I don't want anything else in Manchester because I want to create high frequency to this Gen Z audience.
Very specific audience, yeah.
Yeah. We did the same in Birmingham and it worked brilliantly well. But it was a pain in the neck to buy because there wasn't one media owner that dealt with it all. It was multiple different tiny media owners that we had to get.
Did you get there?
Yeah. Yeah, we won.
How hard was it in that first sort of year or two when you're being told you need to buy media, you're being told you're too purist probably, you're being told, oh, it's comms planning, we just need to go and buy some media.
Yeah.
How did you, in those early years, how did you just continue to stay true to what you believed in?
Yeah, by simply kicking against what the rest of the industry was doing. We were told over and over again, how can you plan media accurately if you're not involved in the buying? To that point, we were so specific about what we want. But we've managed to create relationships with a number of buying agencies now who understand us.
Yeah.
When they get a brief from Craft, they understand it's not going to be a run-of-the-mill brief, that they're going to have to respond to it differently than they would do some of their own full-service clients.
Maybe to a new agency, you might be seen as a bit of a pain due to you wanting stuff differently. But I can also imagine those that start to work with you find it much more interesting than go and buy me 300 ratings. No, I want these 8 programs. I want that spot there, there, and there.
That's planning, though, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, it's
That's what we're
the
in it for.
creativity of
Yeah.
planning. That's why clients don't just buy their own media, right? They expect to have that element of real deep understanding of audience and media and proper plans in place. And so when it gets sort of job lot out of 6 sheets and ratings, and it's not planning in my view.
No.
It's a distribution of budget across channels.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing now, especially for bigger clients, but going to a one-stop shop, is consolidation, whether it's into a holdco, whether it's into a group. Whereas you're pushing completely the other way, where you're asking them one of these channels, media, is to pull planning and buying apart. How do you or how have you gone about that task of pulling them apart and convincing clients actually the outcome's going to be better in the end if you let us do the planning and someone else do the buying?
Do you know what? It hasn't been as hard as you would think. Once we're in front of clients, we almost can talk to what they already know.
Yeah.
A good client already knows that what they're being delivered is
Yeah.
a job lot of media. A good client already knows that the planning here is light, and when we have very little, once our strategy is aligned, we can very quickly get to plans off the back of it, because the client can continually look back at the strategy and say, is this delivering against the strategy? And I think that what's happened over the years, it's because strategy has felt light, it's been a bit flimsy.
Yeah.
It means that there's nothing to hold as a yardstick, hold the plan up to. Does that make sense? Yep. And so then planning becomes sort of subjective. It's sort of, well, I like radio, Oh, well, I like outdoor, and then you've got nothing to kind of just go, well, does it deliver against the strategic principles that we've set out up front? Yes or no?
Yeah.
So that's really it. I think a lot of good clients will just go, absolutely, you're preaching to the converted.
The last comms planning led agency I can think of was Naked, which was back in the kind of early thousands. I believe they still exist. When you started up Craft Media, what is it that you thought you would be able to do different that they just couldn't?
Yeah, so the biggest difference between us and Naked is the level of data analysis that we do, and that's a symptom of the world we live in now, right? There's just more data than there was ever before, and more channels. I loved what Naked did. They were transformational in media globally, right?
Yeah.
They gave media agencies a kick up the arse. They made them more creative, but they were quite aggressive as a business, and there was quite a lot of battles going on at the time. Do you remember? There was sort of creative against naked against media agencies against... It was everyone was fighting everyone. So that's not helpful from a client point of view. Right. That's one of the reasons we have nicest as one of our values, because integration and collaboration is difficult. Yeah. It needs to be done with an open mind and an ability to debate with respect.
And you guys almost insert yourself between the creative agency and the creative idea and the output, which is the media plan. Mm-hmm. Do you almost sometimes feel that you're, I don't know whether it's the marriage guidance counsellor, you're the intermediary in the middle to try and make sure that creative agency's idea comes alive and it's not dumbed down within the media buy?
I think, we're much more directional than a counsellor. So we'll make sure that any buying brief is very clear about what we want. We also will do a brief for a PR agency, brief for a CRM agency, brief for a design agency, everything kind of should come off that overarching comm strategy. And then we will help ensure that each of the executional agencies deliver against that strategy.
In your previous life and my previous life, I've worked with some amazing sort of comms planners, but they're in media agencies, so they can't be independent.
No.
Their job is to be media strategists, really. They're not going to go, no, take half of that media budget and put it into PR. It's not in their interest.
And I think that word comms is become quite a loose word. A client will say, well, I have a comms strategy, and we look at it and say, no, it's a paid media strategy. It's different. So I wish I could come up with a better phrase, but we're stuck with Comstrat, so I just have to bang the drum to make sure that everybody knows it's different. It has to be all channels, otherwise it's not comms, it's just media, or it's just PR.
And you now have an element of brand fame within the industry. You do. You have a unique proposition. You don't get to the size that you are, I think, without having an element of that. And you just mentioned BT.
Yes.
How did you manage to...
BT, one of the few enlightened clients, I think, who realised that, despite having A-star agencies, they really needed someone in the middle to help make sure that the briefs were as tight as they could be, that the briefs were liberating for those A-star agencies to do excellent work. And they actually put a tender out last year. And it happened to land on my desk. We generally don't pitch because very few times are there opportunities for Comstrat or planning only briefs. So Jen and I said, what's the worst that can happen here? I mean, I had to fill in a lot of forms, Patrick.
A lot of tick boxes, I can imagine.
A lot of forms. We had to upgrade our IT security. We had to write all the policies. We had to grow up, basically, just to put the tender in. And we won it.
It's interesting what you said, that you don't pitch.
Yeah.
How did you get to be so big? How do you... What is your growth strategy?
We've grown through recommendation. One client onto another client. So clients talk to clients. Creative agencies enjoy working with us because, as I mentioned, we make the work better. We liberate the idea. That's literally how we've grown, is word of mouth recommendation. And one client has had 5 jobs since we started Craft, and she's hired us for every single one of them.
But you must come up against barriers when clients are like, I get it, but I don't want to do it, or it's just more cost, or it disenfranchises my media agency, or are there some common barriers that you come across?
Yeah, mostly it's I already have a media agency who I really like.
Right.
And, they do some good deals and they buy some good media. So usually in instances like that, if they can't see that we're going to be adding value, then there's kind of no point really. The other thing that we have trouble with is growth through pitching. I have no doubt that we would wipe the floor with pretty much any agency when it comes to strategic recommendations for a brand. But we would get 0 points on the buying element.
And also, I guess they're generally media pitches or they're creative pitches. They're not comms pitches.
They're not comms pitches, no. So it really is an ongoing education for clients. And we also have a generation of clients, right, that's grown up with performance channels.
Yes.
And so there is a need, I think, to get back to client education about the importance of communications in the round and how you don't have to expect it to deliver on the first day, right now.
Yeah.
The importance of holding your nerve, the importance of ideas over just spending money in media. So that we have an event in a few weeks called Planonymous, which is we think that the standard of planning in the industry needs to be shaken up. So it's an online event. Anyone can join. You can join anonymously. So you can put a little avatar on your face or something so we don't know it's you. And And it's a planning course. So going through the fundamentals of what good planning looks like. And I'm hoping that lots of clients come to that.
Brilliant door opener.
It's a brilliant door opener, but it also will show them what they should be looking for from their agencies. And if they're not getting that, they either need to ask for it or they need to come and see me.
Yeah. If I think about marketing for Crafts London, I guess that's your marketing, isn't it? It's things like it's planning courses, it's be useful, it's be insightful. Some people would say you're giving too much away of your craft, but actually you're showing another world, I guess. And is this the type of comms that this is your marketing, really?
Yeah, there's a generosity to our marketing. So we'll usually either applaud some great work. Yeah. We've just released a new thought piece, a fashion thought piece. That's free for the world. We'll do in lockdown. We started doing this, and it worked really well. We had several thought pieces that we wrote, and then we do lunch and learns for pretty much anyone who wants it. So whether it's media, creative, PR agency, we'll do a half an hour talk. The reports are free to download from our website. We've got loads of them now, so and they're quite good reads. They're quite chunky. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a generosity in how we market ourselves.
Excellent. So thinking to the future, what is the future of craft media?
Well, when we started, Jen and I were like, we might be 5 people. Then we thought we might be 10 people. Now we're 27. The dream is that we'll start to do more work over in the States. That's the real opportunity for comms, I think, simply because the standard of agencies over there and the fact that, no agency will pick the phone up from a client if they spend under $10 million. Yeah. So those clients are being really hard done by because the planning that they get is literally impressions on a connected TV plan. Yeah. And so we have a few clients over there. And when we show them what a comms plan looks like, they're almost astonished because it's just like, well, we liked what you were saying, which is why we hired you. But bloody hell, this is insane. I know what to do for every aspect of my business simply with this one plan.
It's interesting that clients see you as maybe procurement see you as another line item of cost, but actually you're not replacing the account planner, the creative planner. You're not replacing the media strategist or the PR strategist.
No, we're bringing it all together.
You're bringing it all together to orchestrate it so it all goes in one direction. Mm-mm. Have you found there's been more resistance to you from media agencies or creative agencies or PR agencies?
Initially, I would say media agencies were both sceptical and curious. But very quickly, actually, once media agencies start to see the output of our work, they can, the self-aware ones will say, we don't do that. And so quite often we'll get a call from a media agency saying, we've got problems with a client. They won't buy anything. They're saying that strategically we're weak. They're going to pitch. We've suggested that rather than pitching, they bring you in as the strategy team. And we will retain the buying. We're basically allowing them to maintain relationships with the client, to make things much easier for a client to buy because the strategy is so solid. Yeah. And get through to a live plan without all of the back and forth that sometimes you get when client starts to debate strategic direction, debate channel choice, etc. Yeah. So it makes the whole process a lot smoother. And I'm always very grateful for media agencies when we get that call, because it just shows that they are respectful of the work that we do, I suppose.
Where do you generally get your people from, and how long does it take for them to become a proper crafty?
Established strategists from agencies are not a good hunting ground for us.
Interesting.
Because they have developed such bad habits, and they've become above the rest of the team, if that makes sense. And I need people who do stuff still.
Doers, yeah.
Yeah. So we tend to bring planners in and train them up. Sometimes we will even bring someone who's they've got a junior strategist title at an agency. And we have been known to say you aren't a junior strat at Craft, you're a planning director, and we're gonna make you the best that you can possibly be, and then we'll give you an option of do you move into Comstrat or do you move into a business director role.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure that we kick out all of the bad habits. We liberate you from thinking only about paid media. We give you a really great understanding of how all channels work. We're also bringing interns. We keep the best. We then train them up into manager level and onto planning director. So yeah, but both ends really, but never the most senior, because that's just not worked out for us.
They're too far gone.
They're too far gone,
Yeah.
and also it just makes them feel shitty
Yeah.
because they think they're really good, and then they come to us and we're just like, nope.
You only know 10% of what we need you to know.
Yeah. You're not doing what we need you to do.
Yeah.
And we've had to have some really tough conversations with people in probation periods where we're just like, I'm really sorry.
So if you could give some advice to agencies about how to be more creative, how to do better work, how to be seen less commoditized by clients, what would you advise them to be or do? Or
I would say think idea first rather than plan. I think agencies jump to a plan way too quickly. Discuss more, debate more, think about hypotheses, really try and think differently before jumping to how do I distribute this budget across media channels, because as I say, that's the easy bit really.
Yeah. So going back to the growth of Craft Media London, so how have you grown? What's been the path?
Honestly, our first full year was 2019. So we started midway through 2018. Then, of course, we had the pandemic. I mean, honestly, we couldn't have had a worse start. So, the advice from everyone was, aim for 10% margin, 10% growth year on year. We've never done that. We've lurched from 80% growth, but parity year on year, 10% growth, 14% growth. It's just been different every single year. 2021 was where we doubled in size. 2022, we sort of maintained that. 23, we went gangbusters in the first 3 quarters, and then it all fell off a cliff in Q4. Do you remember? It was just a horrible Q4. And last year was good, but also slow because of the market. This year started pretty well, but it's if anyone were looking at our commercial numbers, they'd be like, they've literally no idea what they're doing, because it's crazy, lurching forward, maintaining, lurching forward again. But unfortunately, that's the market, I think, more than us. The problem with the market at the moment is it's so project-based. You can't see when those projects are approving. It makes it really difficult for hiring. So we tend to make sure that we've got the business in before we make any new hires.
You started pre-pandemic. You survived through the pandemic. We've come out the other end, and I think, and we find this at 300, that we would find it very difficult to exist pre-pandemic. We'd have had to have an office. We'd have had to have people 5 days a week. There's some brilliant people in the market, and increasingly they are deciding to do contract work, become consultants, etc. Have you found that, and obviously your time pre-pandemic was quite small, but have you found that flexibility of really good people in the market has been to your benefit?
Pre-pandemic, we started Craft, and our intention was to be wholly flexible, to not hire too many people, to be able to make use of, as you say, great talent in the market, that particularly female talent, actually, that had decided that 5 days a week, 14-hour days were not for them anymore. It quickly became apparent that it's quite difficult to do that, to have a business that's full of freelancers, because there's quality control becomes super important, particularly as we scaled.
And the heart and the soul of who
and the
Craft
heart
is.
And the soul, exactly. And the fact that we've got very specific way of planning, it was very difficult to get freelancers to pick that up
Yeah.
and be able to run with
Keep
it.
training people over and over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. So we will bring freelancers in if we've used them before and if there's a very specific role for them. But generally, we're a sort of a full-time agency.
Do you still love it? Do you still enjoy it?
Yeah.
When you talk about it, it feels like there's still passion for what you're doing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, and I love the fact that I can say this because we're friends. Everyone in that business is better than me. Everyone. They are exceptional people. And I'll go and see clients and they go, will you be on it? I say, honestly, once you've met the team, you won't care. You won't care whether I'm here or not. Because I love the fact that we're bringing through a generation of really, really well-trained comms experts who can hold their own against anyone in the industry. And yeah, I'm really proud of that.
So finally, before you go, we've got a small thank you for you. So for everybody that comes onto the podcast, we give a T-shirt with the 300 goat on it. So our goat does have wings, so it's a very special goat.
Thank you very much.
Just as a thank you.
Oh,
but it's
delighted.
also as part of a question that, so I'd just like to ask you, who is your goat within the marketing industry, the person that sort of has inspired you?
Do you know, I didn't really know him that well actually, but I would say Graham Bednash.
Okay.
I worked with him very briefly. So he was the founder of Michaelides and Bednash, so the precursor
Proper
to
comms
Naked.
plan, yeah.
They were just a brilliant hub of idea generation. They were all fantastic people, like proper experts. Bednash is now in one of the networks doing something. But anyway, I would say Graham Bednash, if he's listening. Love you.
So thank you very much, Sally.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to all of our viewers and our listeners, and tune in next time for 300 Seconds on Agency Growth.